Excuse me, sir. Do you know what time it is? I'd like to know what the time is. Oh, I do hope I know what the time is.
The number you have dialed.
And now, somewhere in Cape Town, South Africa, it's hashtag beer time.
Hey guys and girls, and welcome to episode 4 of Hashtag Beer Time with me, T-Bone Troy. This is a recording that was done about 4 weeks ago, I'd say, with Martin Tucker and Mary Turner. They are the organizers and hosts of the Cape Town Festival of Beer. And seeing as it's the actual festival this weekend, I thought, heck, why not release the podcast so we can get some traction? We talk about the festival and how many years it's been going and what it's done for the beer industry. We also get to talk about, all things beer and where we've come as a beer drinking nation. We get to try some foreign beers, which are pretty tasty. We get to try some local beers, which are pretty tasty. All in all, it's a good show. And without further ado, I hope you enjoy it. Ciao. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a few minutes past 12, and it is beer time. It is, let me just close this. Close that. 12 o'clock on a Tuesday. It's beer time with me, T-Bone Troy. I hope you've been looking forward to the show. I've been looking forward to the show. We've got some really cool guests in the studio. We always have cool guests in the studio. You may recognize them. I would say they're pretty well known in the Cape Town scene, the Cape Town beer scene. But let's introduce our first guest. He's got a voice of an angel, Martin Tucker. Great to have you in the studio.
Thanks very much, Troy.
And we also have Mary Turner. This is not your first time in the studio. Welcome back.
Thank you, T-Bone. It was nice. It's nice to be back, having taken about a week to recover from the last time here.
Yeah.
It's also nice being the only Murray in the studio for once.
That is true. And I'm trying to recall the last time you were in the studio. I don't recall anything.
Did you have clothes on?
This is a beer show, so yes, we have.
This is not that Two Oceans Vibe radio show, Tuckbox. Wrong one.
Martin, you've been on the show before. Well, not this show. You've been on the radio, Two Oceans Vibe radio, for a few things.
Yes, we've...
Good things, or were you called in for bad things?
No, so we've covered a few beer things. We've done a couple of live tastings. Hopefully we'll do one later on. They've also called on me when there used to be a sports show for my opinion on club rugby and various other things sporting. And I think those went quite well. It's a pity it's not always a call-in show, because then you would get a lot of feedback of angry people who disagree with what
No,
you
it's
say.
maybe a good thing.
Yeah, so there's some guy lying in bed 2 o'clock in the morning in America who thinks it's a live podcast, and he picks up the phone and phones in and wants to have a rant at us saying something about his beer or about his rugby team, and then you can't answer it.
Thank heavens. Well, speaking of beer tastings,
We've got some.
Let's get into it. And I tried to stick to a theme today. We do kind of have a theme, but we played the darkness, a thing called love. So most of the beers we have in our little sneaky suitcase here are dark beers. So I'm very excited. Let's start with the first one, shall we?
Do it. What do we got?
And
Don't know if Troy's ever told anyone, but his suitcase has speakers in the top of it.
it's special. It really is special. But I mean, we've got, I think, Mary, between you and I, we've got some overseas beers. Tucker's bought some exceptionally aged beers. I've bought 2 Canadian beers. So
What have we got?
We've got Canadian, we've got American, and South African. So it's a nice little
We've got a
little
good mix.
So the first one is Hop City Brewing Co. Black Lager. It's called the 8th Sin.
It's a good-looking label you've got on there.
It's
I'm a
very
big fan of the labels, and that's
yes, this is to
very
describe the
saucy
people,
label, that.
all the thousands of people listening. It is a Mexican skull.
Hi,
with-
Troy's mom.
Yes, and it's got all patterns like the what's the Day of the Dead for the
Yeah, De los
It's-
Muertos.
That's the one. So it's got a little skull, and it's really cool. It's a beautiful big 440ml can. Enough chit chat. Let's try this, guys. One of the reasons we doing
That's magnificent.
doing dark beers today is one, the weather deserves calls for it, and then secondly, I feel South Africa doesn't have enough dark beers. Would you agree with that sentiment, Tucker?
958,000%. You are correct. I think our problem is, first of all, we are a nation of lager drinkers, which has probably been said maybe as many times as that percentage that I agreed with your comment on.
Exactly.
And also, the only dark beers that we knew or know are Castle Milk Stout and Guinness. And a lot of people just can't comprehend having a thick, rich, creamy, silky, smooth beer that maybe doesn't quench their thirst as much as a lager, and that's a bit more complicated and, in fact, doesn't look like a beer to them. So, yeah, we're very behind.
Yeah.
But there are a few guys who make some really, really good dark beers in South Africa. Triggerfish Empowered Stout would be one of them. Franschhoek's.
I had that recently. It's
Yeah.
come a long way from where it was.
It is. It's to me, it's consistently the best.
Yeah.
There's a seasonal winter porter that Citizen brews as well called Pacifist. Franschhoek's got a very nice start.
Got to get Gary on the show.
Yeah, Gary
would have
a few words, but
Yes.
he'd drink you through quite a few beers
No,
in the
I've
session.
had an evening with him. That,
Yeah,
no,
Gaz enjoys a splash or two.
Yeah.
And then from upcountry, there was a dark lager, like a dunkel type of beer made by Brauhaus am Dam,
Yes.
which was also quite nice. And again, unexpected because it's very dark, very roasted, but it's very thin in your mouth. And it's
I know Copper Lake made I think it was a dark ale of some sorts like that.
we just can't seem to get past amber. Really, in the country. So amber would be as heavily roasted and as dark a malt as people sort of go. And they should just go one step further. There's nothing better, whether it's a winter day or a summer's day, than having a delicious, dark, bitter, chocolatey,
it's that roastiness.
caramelly,
Speaking
Milo.
of
We've got a few guys coming to the festival that are bringing some of their dark beers with
Well,
them.
let's
Yeah.
before we
Atlantic
jump into
Storm's
the
got a great one.
the fest, but I'm
throw
just
that
going to
out.
have a little sniff of this lager.
And it's
So it's a lager. So when people think lager, okay, cool, it's going to be crisp, clean, refreshing. But no, this has got a little bit of
good.
chocolate roastiness in it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
still clean. There's no heaviness.
It is like a Milo.
It is. Oh, it's good.
It's
It's like Milo and Coke
I'm glad you
mixed
bought the
together.
440 ml.
So
Yeah, it's very good.
you've done very well. Canada's actually making some really awesome beers. They've got a couple of really good breweries. Garrison Brewing,
they
Propeller, Hop City. I think I might have also brought a Canadian beer.
Have you heard of Nickelbrook Brewery?
No.
No, I
suppose
it's another Canadian man.
I think it's a play on Nickelback, but
Yeah.
they actually make some really tasty hoppy beers. And I mean, I had one there. It was called the Naughty Neighbor, some half-naked woman on a can. So that's why I bought it in the first place. But it was freaking amazing. So yeah, just to echo what you said there, Tucker. Yeah, Canada is, I think, a little bit underrated in terms of beer making, especially
Yeah.
when you're neighbors with powerhouse like the States.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think they're also in that line of latitude that grows a bit of hops. I think they do have some hops of their own as well. There's a couple of Canadians in the South African.
They've got acres of land there.
Yeah, they do have a lot of land. They've got a lot of snow as well.
Yeah.
And if you were Donald Trump and you said Nambia, just like you said Canada, you could maybe confuse it and call it Candida as well. But just
You could,
throwing
but
that out
You
there.
could. I don't
too
think
early
we've
to
had
cut them
enough-
off?
Yeah, I don't think we've had enough beers yet.
But I mean, talking Canada and American beers, I mean, we've had this conversation before. It's one of the big problems is that it's underappreciated a lot of the time, particularly here in SA, because it's just too difficult to get any of their beers.
yeah.
Unless you're Rob Haynes and managing to kind of bring back some
It's
for.
a struggle to get the American beers.
Oh, sure.
And if you do get the American beers into retail here, they are a big craft brewery. So to try and get any small craft breweries anywhere in the world into South Africa, there needs to be surplus and stuff like that. But those American guys, they're massive.
Yeah.
Have we considered actually hiring a full-time beer mule to come from the States every week? If you're out there and want to be the official hashtag Beer Time Beer Mule, give Troy a call.
So the one thing that surprises me on this is it's like when you lived in South Africa during apartheid, everything had to be translated into English and Afrikaans.
So they got a little bit of French there.
So they got French on it. It's from Ontario, and everything has French, except for the name, obviously. But it's not actually a 440, Troy. It's a 473 ml can. Now, who the
That's
hell
a thing?
makes
Okay,
a
so
470?
isn't that the official pint size?
That's value for money,
No,
right
pint
there.
is just over 500 mils. I think it's 564 or something. So 473 might be in fluid ounces, some conversion. And it's 25 IBUs, which is...
Okay, I've got another can here, 473 ml. So that must be
So that's their 440, basically.
it must be a Canada thing. Or
Yeah.
hey, look, I'm not complaining.
It's a very, very good beer, this, Troy. You must have had some exceptional beers on the show, but I'd be very happy drinking this often in a bar in Cape Town.
We've definitely started with a bang. This is,
Yeah, I feel like we did the
It's
same
gonna be
thing
hard
last
to
time.
beat,
It was
yeah.
hard to beat.
and it's this is just
How much we got?
a black
Another
lager.
little bit
But
more.
yeah, this is
If you could see a high five on this thing now, we're high fiving each other. Well,
okay.
just Troy.
I'd like more black lagers in
There's a
the
little
country.
bit-
I
little
think
bit in there.
that's
So
that's
a good
that's the next
dunkel is...
go for it. Go for it. Finish
Can
it.
I?
Yeah,
Okay,
no, finish it.
I just finished it. Sorry, guys.
All right.
A good dunkel
that's
used to be made by the old Paulaner when Wolfgang was there, and that
It's still being made. That's CBC now.
correct. But I don't think they're allowed to use the same recipe because of the politics.
Yeah, for
so
sure,
They
for
don't
sure.
make the Salvato and the old red Weiss. They just make an
Oh,
amber
the
Weiss
Salvato
now.
was.
Yeah, that was strong.
That's still on sale at Beer House, if I'm correct.
Really.
I think it's still there. But
That
the
can only
last-
age better and better every year.
I mean, yeah,
Super
that's also a good beer. But Wolfgang was on the show last week, and he said, he would have brought some Dunkel, but they've sold out.
Yeah.
So that's a good indicator that there is a market there. People do want a dark lager style beer. So I just for the brewers listening, and I know you're listening, we need more dark beers, and it doesn't have to be thick, heavy, 20%. I might have one of those, but it can be a light, refreshing. And again, just on what you were saying earlier, Martin, education. People will get educated. They will learn. It's all about trying. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're trying now.
Yeah.
We're educating ourselves.
We fall very behind in South Africa. It's something that we had a little media launch the other day, which Murray will tell you about later. But we did speak about the education in South Africa, and I mean, I know it sounds bad to say it, but even our homeless people who drink wine know the difference between various types of wine, whether it be crackling or Sauvignon Blanc or a late harvest, a sweet wine, or a red or a white wine. And yet we still have people in South Africa of all races and demographics. And it doesn't matter whether you're a multi-millionaire and you're sitting in your house in Bishop's Court or whether you're sitting in a tavern in Googs. Everyone gravitates towards a lager because that's all we know.
Yeah.
In fact, interesting little thing about milk stout is actually brewed in a closed fermenter in South Africa with a lager yeast. So it shouldn't even be a stout. It's still a lager type of beer, a lager style of beer. So we literally have all been brainwashed here into not trying other things. And maybe we've got an Irish friend, or we watched Ireland play South Africa rugby one day, and we were in a pub that happened to serve Guinness.
Oof, yeah.
And that's about it, we literally don't know any better.
Yeah, I suppose nothing angers, maybe that's not the right word, or infuriates me more when I hear people saying that they don't want to drink an ale simply because it's warm, flat, and just a British kind of style beer. And I have to explain to them that's just not what an ale is. An ale is a whole category. It's similar to, it's like saying red wine and white wine. You've got these, it just branches off into these other amazing styles or types of beers. So
But that, I mean,
when someone does say, I'm not going to have an ale, I have to explain to them, well, would you drink a Guinness or a Weiss or an IPA? And they say, well, that's not an ale. And I say, no, it actually is an ale. So trying to get people to recognize that beer is one drink, and within that drink you've got different branches off in the beer world. So
I mean, it's really simple. You either like beer or you don't like beer. It's the different types of beer you might not be a big fan of. But I mean, Martin and I both know someone very well who basically, he looks just will not do craft beer at all.
Yeah.
There is only one beer he will drink and he will not touch anything
do I
else.
know him?
Won't mention his name.
No, we
Tom
won't
Clanning.
mention. We obviously.
Won't mention his name, Tom Clanning. So, but Murray again, and you know, Troy, it's a pity you weren't there last week.
You did get the invite, right?
I did get the invite.
Oh, you did get the invite.
Didn't have enough followers on Facebook.
I don't know if you got
And,
the RS. Did we get your RSVP?
Crack the nod.
And basically, we sat there, and you know, maybe it's a repetitive spiel, but I tell people it's like, you know, what don't you like about this beer? Because it's like saying I don't like red wine,
Yes.
but then saying you like white wine. It's the exact same thing. If you don't like a lager, but you'll drink a Weiss, you can't discount all other beers that look the same as that lager,
Yes.
because lager looks differently, or vice versa is probably an easy way of doing it. So you only drink lager, but you don't like Weiss because it's milky and cloudy and it's a straw color and it's not what you're used to. And then say, I don't drink it, look at it, it doesn't look like what I'm used to.
Yeah.
Because you might get an unfiltered lager that looks the same. But because someone tells you it's a lager, you're just so brainwashed into going, I only drink lagers,
Yeah.
that you don't even have like time to have a sip. Yet you'll go to a wine show and someone will tell you it's a wooded Chardonnay and you go, oh, nothing with wood on it. I don't
Exactly.
touch that.
But
You know,
just to
it's-
cut you off there, it's almost as if the people like me who are trying to spread the good gospel of beer are getting attacked on both sides in terms of, okay, this is what you could be drinking, just to echo what you said, you know, this is a Weiss, this is a IPA. But then on the other side, and I'm going to be honest here, is that you do still have beers in South Africa that are not sticking to the standard.
Yeah.
So they're trying to make a IPA, and it's just missing everything that an IPA is,
Yeah.
and they're labeling it as such, which is, you know, again, like you're fighting on both sides here with
Spot on.
trying to get people to make the right beer, but also trying to educate the public on what beer is. So, yeah, you get this person who goes into the small dorpy and there's a local brew pub, and he's just made a fresh batch of Pale Ale, and it could be Pale Ale, and
Disgusting.
it's cloudy as hell, and it's got a infection, and they say no, this is what a Pale Ale is.
Yeah.
That one consumer is worth 10 consumers, because they're going to spread the word and say, no, I'm not drinking craft beer. So that's where I find myself now, trying to
Spread the gospel.
preach. Brothers,
Duckbox, what do you think the trend has been from the start of the Festival of Beer? I mean, we're going into the 8th festival this year. What's been the trend?
8th festival.
Eighth festival.
Eight
Tucker,
years.
you haven't aged a bit.
Thanks very much.
We can talk about your agent secrets later.
Yeah.
Please continue.
But over the 8 years the festival's been going, from when the first one started to what the kind of guys are bringing to the festival now in terms of the different beers, has there been a kind of general trend? And, you know, at the start it was more kind of the lagers, or it was more of the IPAs, and it's kind of shifted across, and anything in particular that you kind of picked up from these guys?
So in our very first year, I can't put my finger on it, but it was very hard to convince people to drink anything other than what they knew. They love the experience, they love the tasting, and again, I bring wine back into this because South Africa is, whether we are categorized as New World wine country or not, we've been making wine here for 350 years, and for some of us, wine has been way more prominent or present in our lives than we think. And just because of that, as I said, it doesn't matter what race, color, or creed you are. We actually know the difference between a dry white, a semi-sweet, a Sauvignon Blanc or a Cabernet Sauvignon. And with beer, we just don't have that. So in our first year, brewers were the exact same. They wanted to be a brewer, but all they knew how to brew was a lager. And a lager is actually one of the most difficult styles of beer to brew because you need cooling and you need to
No,
brew.
it's intense. I tell
do it
any
at home,
home
it's very
brewer, any
nice.
home brewer says, oh, I want to make a Pilsner or a lager. I say, dude,
Good luck.
just no. I just say, do not tackle that.
Don't attempt it yet. So what we had in those first few years was we had guys who were making lagers that tasted like crap. And then we would have SAB at the event. We would have a couple of Belgian beers, some Dutch beers. We had a few Italian beers from Birra Moretti. And we didn't have as big a range as we do now, obviously. And all of a sudden, people were forced to taste ales because they actually knew what a lager tasted like. So now they were going up to, I won't mention the names of some of the, actually I can, some of them have closed down now. So breweries like Napier Brewery, for example. And they went to Napier Brewery and they tasted their weak attempt at a lager, and they just knew that this didn't taste like what they were used to.
Yeah.
Forget about the clarity and the cleanness and the crispness of the beer. It just didn't taste right because maybe there was an infection, or it was it was sulfury, or there was something wrong with it. So they tried that guy's ale, which is a lot more forgiving.
Yeah.
He'd obviously experimented on a nice pale ale or something like that, and he actually did a decent job at it.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how guys like Devil's Peak, for example, started with golden ales and IPAs, grew their brand to such a point where they got great traction, a good brand name, good investment,
Yeah.
and now they only started brewing a lager. So they went the other way around. So to answer your question, Murray, I think we had a whole lot of bad lagers in those days and some really medium ales, and now we have some unbelievable lagers and some very, 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 very good ales that are being brewed. So everyone has improved, but I think just the general level of beer making has improved. There's guys like Troy who, like he said, when he tells homebrewers, that means there's people asking him, hey, I want to start brewing.
Yeah.
In the old days, there was no one.
Yeah.
What I'm excited about, and we can say it's also going to relate to the festival, but I'm excited to see a non-trend happening, if I can say that. Like you said, Murray, in the question, like, where's the trend? I can say that 2 years ago, there were a lot of IPAs. Last year, for I think the homebrew competition we judged, it was a rye beer that won, or it wasn't something that we expected. But what I'm looking forward to in the in the beer industry, in the South African beer industry, but also in the festivals, is brewers pushing boundaries and coming up with something that they're excited about, and not worrying about what the consumer wants. So I don't expect a hell of a lot of IPAs at the festival. Sure, we'll have some, but we're going to have guys who are going to be making what they want, and really making a 8 or 9 out of 10 kind of beer. Whereas I feel a few years ago, people were all making IPAs and they were kind of 6 out of 10. So I'm expecting the level to rise, but I'm also expecting to see breweries pushing their own specialty beers that they are happy to make.
Yeah, I mean, I think
That's my prediction.
No, I think you're completely right. We've had some guys that have done some really quite interesting things. I mean, Atlantic Storm, they've done it before. Was it Rosewater? They did a Rosewater, what was
IPA.
it? Rosewater IPA.
But
They're
their
doing that-
IPA has improved now.
It's improved.
So the Rosewater was a cool,
But that's what I'm saying. They're
Yeah.
doing something different. So instead of them just doing, like the breweries just doing these kind of flatline, I'm not saying they're flat beers at all. I'm just saying they were just doing an IPA. And now we're kind of seeing guys like, I mean, Devil's Peak's always a good example. They've done that Juicy IPA, the Juicy Lucy, and they've done all the other ones. And you're seeing the other guys kind of, within each of the categories, they're kind of creating different styles out of those. I mean, CBC's done a couple of fruit beers. They do a raspberry and a
peach.
bias beers. And I think we're going to see a lot more of those this year. And it's really cool to see because, again, it's like with the consumer, the consumer doesn't really know what they enjoy until they've actually, got a pint in front of them and they're getting stuck into it. Yeah. Only once they've had that do they go, ooh, shit, that's good. I'll have another.
And you just hope that they remember for when there's no festival, when
Sure.
they're going to a store or a shop, and they're confronted by that tsunami of beer cans and beer bottles
And that's also
in fridges.
And that's also the problem because you can pour someone a really good beer, and if that has been bottled and labeled badly, it just doesn't have great labeling, and you kind of arrive at the liquor store and you see, oh, what am I going to try today? And even the label isn't all that appealing. You could say to them, you've had this beer a dozen times before and you've loved it every time, that's the beer, and they're going to go, oh, are you sure? It just doesn't look like that's the one that I would enjoy.
No, spot on. But I think they've also learned to look past the labels now. So in the beginning, it was exactly that. Some dude had a really good designer, made a really crap beer, put it in a bottle, but the label was awesome. The bottle store owner liked the label and said, this will sell. It was maybe priced semi-right. The consumer walks into the bottle store and sees a cool label, and they buy it. But they actually don't know when they get home because they're tasting it on their own.
Yep.
They're not tasting it with someone who knows remotely anything about beer.
Sure.
And they go, Shh, this is rad. And I can tell you now that there's a very successful brand in South Africa that did exactly that. And they made shocking beers, disgusting beers. And their
Sure.
beers are...
100 different little lights are popping up in my head.
and unfortunately, the packaging pulled the wool over people's eyes.
Yeah.
And now I think our beer market is becoming a bit more educated. The standards being raised a bit, and there's, in the old days, I used to read those homebrewing websites. Like Troy's a member of the Southeasters. I think he's still the president, or he was the president.
No, just the retired president. I still get the perks.
So he still gets the perks.
There are no perks, people.
But when Troy was in charge of the Southeasters, it had grown to quite a considerable sort of amount of people. And they would even get guys who brewed full-time for a living, like Tim Godfrey, as a member of the Southeasters. You'd have a guy brewed
From
it
SAB, yeah.
from SAB because all Tim brews is lagers. So if he wants to brew something else, he has to do it on a small little kit at home in his garage, which is quite a comprehensive setup that he actually has. And he has to do it himself. So it means that even he's educating himself, even though he's got 25, 30 years experience, plus a
Master's
degree in
brewing,
exactly.
yeah.
So all of that is just raising the level of education of beer drinkers in South Africa.
Full stop.
Yeah.
We need a drink of beer.
I think so.
because we've got a lot of beers to get through.
Yeah.
And, no, Tucker, you've thrown a bit of a spanner here and bring in some warm beers. But
My bad.
we'll let them chill a bit. You have bought some nice beers, so that's fine. But what I'm going to do, we're going to jump to the IPAs.
Do it.
And we're going to do, because they're cool. So let's...
Cool, man.
Murray, you bought some beers. So let's see what beers you bought.
Yeah, so I bought 2 beers. I can't tell you much about either of them because, the last time I was on the show, I'd bought a whole lot of beers and I told you that I'd basically nicked a couple of those out of my brother's fridge. And those are a couple of the beers that have been nicked out of the fridge. So I haven't actually tried either of those,
We'll have this one.
but they both look particularly interesting. That one itself.
Okay, so this is Modus Mandarina India Pale Ale from Sky Brewing, Durango, Colorado. Why do I know this label? Modus Operandi. Isn't it the other beer they make?
Google.
Google. Anyway,
I'd be
this
lying if I told you.
is a India Pale Ale dry hopped with Mandarina, Nachi, hops and brewed with orange peel. So I'm expecting a Nazi kind of flavor. It's got a little quote here that says, "Lip up, fatty." I have absolutely no idea what that means, but I'm expecting
Crack it.
delicious flavors. Oh, there's something good about opening a can, but there's also something even better. Cherry on the top, knowing that you've bought it all the way from the States.
Yeah.
It's like you've put some effort into this, and you've saved it for the right moments and the right time.
But again, people underestimate our beers. So they say, oh, these American beers travel so well. And it's like the American beers travel as well as ours. We just treat them a lot better, because we think that they were paid for in dollars, so they're like gold.
So I'm definitely getting a little,
Mandarina-ish.
but more of like getting a bit of a savory kind of. Dare I say it's like
Good.
not in a bad way, but like a Marmite-y, like a.
I feel this is the one thing I do feel a
Could
little
be
bit
the-
sorry for everyone listening because you can't fully appreciate how good some of these beers really do smell. No matter how much we tell you, they just smell.
Well, the
And
only
look
thing they
and
can do is
taste.
just look at the pictures afterwards and just imagine in their mind.
And scratch and sniff.
Yeah, I know that we don't really have a policy on the show, but if a beer is bad, then we kind of just, we go silence and we just talk about other things.
So there's
But
that
we'll talk about
policy
this.
again. But there's that policy. wine judges are ruthless in South Africa. They make no friends. And you eventually become friends because if you don't listen to the guy, your wine's never going to improve.
I know, for sure. Like, we've had a few stinkers on the show, and
There's a Marmite.
there's a bit of a savory note there. We've had a few bad beers on the show, and I haven't called them out on air, but I've said there's unfortunately an infection. So this is what you need to do to improve. And no matter if you're in the beer industry, in the restaurant industry, if you're selling clothes, I don't care what industry you're in. If a customer comes back to you and gives you feedback and says, this product is infected, this is what's gone wrong, as a business owner, who doesn't want that?
You can't afford to actually get it wrong.
Yeah. So
Whether it's the beer or it's the bottling or the canning or whatever. I mean, guys spend so much time making sure that the beer they're actually making is good. And then you find a lot of the time it's actually because their bottling line is not working, or someone's not capping the beer properly.
It's free feedback, and you want that. But thank you. This is delicious. I will say that I have had more intense India Pale Ales, IPAs. So I feel this is almost like a pale ale.
Yeah, this is very pale ale, and Mandarina's very interesting use of it because they've used it very well. It actually gives it like almost a nachi.
You can feel like someone's rubbed that nachi peel on your.
It's really good. There's a lot of people where
Sunday brunch beer.
It goes missing in it. You don't get what they've used as an adjunct in the brewing process.
This is the type of beer that you would definitely buy a 6-pack of, and you just stick them in the fridge, and you just happily just have them on your own.
It almost tastes.
All 6 by yourself?
Yeah, I would definitely.
It almost tastes tartrazini, like you get in the like your Oroses and stuff.
But not in a synthetic.
not in a bad way. Yeah, just like they've recreated that taste.
So, for the people listening at home, we've had 2 really good beers to kick the show off. And I mean, the only person that comes to mind again with Nachi beers is Wolfgang with his
peach.
Mandarina IPA.
So this is also an interesting size, 355 mils. Again, we use 330s and 340s. Are these all standard cans and we're being ripped off in South Africa by 15 mils, and these guys are forced to put what it actually is by their Bureau of Standards? Or
The Americans always do things differently. So
they just-
Saying that, the last one was Canadian, and the 2 you've looked at were both Canadian beers.
Yeah. Very, very nice. Well done.
Yes, well, guys, off to a great start.
We're off to a flyer, yeah?
What's
Drinking out of these nice Spiegelau glasses.
nice glasses. It makes a difference when you have good glasses, clean glasses. You can see the lacing here is good.
Mine didn't last long enough to leave lacing.
But guys, tell us. I wanted to chat a little bit more about your event you had. You had a small little media launch for the Festival of Beer.
Yeah.
Is what I wanted to ask is this the first kind of media launch you had? Do you think, why is it important to have a media launch for a festival? So let's talk a little bit about the marketing kind of aspects, and I'll tie in some other things. But Mary, I'll let you answer that first part question.
Yeah, so we had the official sort of media launch for the festival on Wednesday evening at Beer House. They were kind enough to have us for the evening, which was great. Seemed like the sort of a very appropriate spot to do it. Yeah,
Beer House.
So this was kind of the official one for this year. For the last two years, I think we've had it built in with what we do the night before the festival actually opens, where we have the Brewers Braai. And the Brewers Braai is kind of the main event for a lot of the brewers that come to the festival, because it's a night that all the brewers just get together, everyone brings some beers, we have a big braai, everyone talks a bit of shit about their beers, talks about what they're bringing to the festival, and it's really nice for the brewers to just kind of hang out. And for the last 2 years, we'd had the media event kind of built into that, so the media could kind of chat to the brewers up front, and they didn't have to kind of deal with the craziness that does kind of come with the festival.
Yeah.
And this year, we decided we were going to do something a little bit different, and we got a couple of brewers together. So we got Steph from Little Wolf Brewery and our good friend Murray Middleton from Metal Lane. Mm-hmm. So the guys came through and took the media through a couple of their beers, and what was meant to be a blind tasting that Martin quite quickly decided was going to not be a blind tasting, but was very funny. It ended up being a
Tasting.
I'm not joking. It was a quiz of what size pants do I wear? That was a question.
Murray,
that was a question that Martin asked.
That was a tiebreaker.
What?
Troy would have got that.
And the result?
2 people got it right.
Everyone else thought I was a 32. Very kind of them.
Yeah.
Sure.
But he wasn't a 32. For those of you who don't have a webcam viewing this radio station, we would need a wider webcam now that Murray's officially come out as a size 38 athletic regular.
Muscle, big bones.
Yeah. You know, I like to tell myself that. No, but it was an awesome event. We had some really cool media come through, and I think we've actually got another event coming up in a couple more weeks.
2nd of November.
2nd of November.
Troy, you want to come?
Yeah, I was just going to say.
I don't know.
I'm in.
I don't
You're
know. Are we going to bother with the data usage, given that he never RSVPs?
I'll bring the snacks.
Bring beers.
Okay.
Bring beers. Bring your glassware. So yeah, it was very good. As I said, we do normally throw, the kitchen sink at media launches and stuff like that, and it does help. But we just thought as well to do it in a slightly different way. And it was quite cool. We did a tasting of about 10 or 12 different beers and a bit of educational stuff, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. And yeah, it worked well. We had a lot of good feedback. We had a lot of people who said they learned quite a bit. We had a lot of people who started appreciating other beers and breweries. And I think the 2 young up-and-coming brewers in Murray from Metal Lane and Stefan from Little Wolf, they had some really good feedback as well. We had a couple of guys who just blatantly were like, your beer's shit, I can't drink this, And then Murray explained, and then Murray explained it to them and told them what they're supposed to be tasting and smelling and seeing and the flavors and the aromas. And by the second beer, the guys had started appreciating it. You can't compare apples with oranges. You got to compare apples with apples.
And Uber did fantastic business on the evening.
Yeah,
Fantastic business.
You need that. I'm a big supporter of using any taxi service when you've had more than one. Taka, before we go to a quick break, there's something that we're kind of pivoting here, but I did want to ask you about this year's Cape Town Festival beer, more particularly with location. I see that the SAB Festival beer, every year it's been held at SAB Newlands. I've just recently discovered that it's actually moved to Grand West now.
That's their beer fest.
That's the October style beer fest.
The Newlands Beer Fest.
Yes.
Or the Spa.
And I mean, I've just had a lot of friends who would usually go to this kind of event who've just said, actually, I'm not going to bother this year just because it's in a different area. Question to you is, do you think that location is important when organizing a massive beer fest?
So we've been quite lucky in that we haven't had anyone else to rely on. I think it shows that the SAB Year Fest is based on SAB, and now that SAB is now part of AB InBev, they've had to come up with an alternative plan, and maybe you can't use the fields and you can't do this, and we won't sponsor you in this way because it's a different shareholder now, it's a different business, and it shows that they were directly related to it. We are 148 times more independent than that, and when we lose money, we lose the money.
Sure.
So doing it on the Greenpoint Common is a very cool place for us. It's kiddie friendly. There's a lot of grass to walk on. There's parking. It's safe. There's ample bus access. The waterfront's nearby. So from our point of view, I don't think we would move in a hurry. The only reason we would move is capacity, which, touch wood, we haven't reached yet, although financially it would be awesome to hit 20 or 30,000 people coming to your festival. But it's a lot more comfortable and it's a lot more cozy. And yes, some days might look a bit emptier than others, but we get a load of people on a couple of the days. And it's not always about being squashed in like a sardine and seeing how many people you can get through the door. It's also about having enough space and enough room to sit on the grass and to drink a beer and watch the bands from a distance instead of being in the middle of a dance floor and a mosh pit. And you know, we've been very lucky over the years with not many pickpockets and no fights and no real incidents and you know,
At least in Cape Town.
in
I
Cape
mean,
Town. Yeah.
I won't forget, sort of 3 years ago, it was my first, I think it was my first festival of beer, and we were in Joburg for the Joburg Festival of Beer, and we were all kind of at the back of the sort of staff management tent, and Martin, mid-conversation, takes off and just grabs this lady. Martin, what are you doing? No. Lady, open your bag. Opens her bag and starts taking out cell phone after cell phone. That these guys were coming in, they'd paid for the entry into the festival, and they were going around in teams and pickpocketing. And Martin, from paying for his sins of the days when he was a nightclub manager, could see these guys a mile away.
Yeah.
And
So you're doubling down as a organizer and a protection.
Yeah, no, I just hate to see people's personal possessions
No,
taken.
it's good to know that the festival goes on
Yeah.
double
We've
looked
also-
after.
we've also got some quite heavy security at the festival. We've got a guy that we love greatly called Hercules,
Hercules,
who
don't mess with
You
the
don't want
Hercules.
to. You don't want to mess with someone.
Don't
like
mess with the Hercules.
Yeah.
Turn you into a chicken wing in 3 seconds. But so Troy, just again to answer your question, it's I feel very sorry for the organisers of SAB Beer Fest that they lose that field vibe. But I have no doubt that Grand West, you know, to get 5,000 or 10,000 people in, will also go all out to get the feet
Sure.
through the door like they do for concerts.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, in Joburg and in Durban, they both happen. Both those SAB Beer Fests happen at, I think, Suncoast Casino in Durban and in Joburg at Monte Casino.
Okay.
So I think they're pretty used to operating on bricks and paving and that.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not part of the whole vibe for them because they've got the big Oompa band and they don't have the mosh pit. And it's not really about tasting and moving around. It's about sitting at long beer benches and drinking, you know, 3 beers from SAB. So, yeah, our festival wouldn't work if we moved it into a giant hall. Maybe one day
No,
we'll move
you
into
need-
the
please-
Cape Town Stadium.
Please keep it at
Yeah.
Green Points. It's definitely one of my favorite locations.
Thanks.
Speaking of Green Points, we want to move on to our next beer because, as I said, we do have a lot of beers. It's a local beer, Gallows Hill. Now, I could be wrong, but I know that Gallows Hill is the old
Traffic
Green
department.
Point traffic departments
So-
where they used to hang people.
Correct. So
And all their labels are like your toe tags,
yes.
which is creepy but also really cool.
And it's a crow on top of the thing, as in rah, rah. So
Great impression.
the 2 brewers and the third partner in Gallows Hill Brewing Company, Christoph Skulk and his wife Cara, they basically used to live in the area. And that's how it got the name. And yeah, Gallows Hill is true to its name. It was where it started. Very rudimentary beginnings. They've now got quite a cool little setup, and they brew out of Woodstock, but the brewery is still called Gallows Hill. They've been at the festival since day one. They only make very small batch beers, very
Yes.
limited, maybe 500-600 liters at a time. When those sell out, then they'll make another batch. They are true passion brewers in that they're not in it for the money.
Yeah.
You know, obviously things would change if they started brewing 10 or 15,000 bottles a month. And they do everything bottle conditioned, labeled by hand, bottled by hand. I mean, it could only be as handcrafted as this. Very limited, very small batch.
Yeah, you
This-
hardly see this in the stores. You see it at
No.
Ruland Liquors, and I mean that's pretty
Yeah.
much the only place I've
But I
seen
mean,
it.
you said that was the really nice thing you pointed out, is that they are passion brewers. So every year for the festival, we're trying to actually go around and sort of feature the guys that are going to be at the festival ahead of time, so that when guys arrive at the festival, they can go and like meet the guys that they've already seen online. And when we chatted with these guys last year, you know, they said the only reason they started selling the beer was that they could actually keep paying for this hobby that they loved so much. Because if you're just brewing beer as a hobby, it can become very expensive very quickly, depending on how much you're trying to brew. And that was the only reason they started selling it, was because they needed to be able to pay just for them being able to brew the beer.
Sure.
So like Martin says, It's not a money making scheme for them. They just want to be able to pay for the beer that they make.
That's cool. And you know, like if you get a guy who just wants to make a few thousand bottles and have some for his mates and do the occasional fest and little weekend hobby, that's awesome.
And what they do as well, which you would know, Troy, being a brewer, is they experiment. So if you do like a beer of theirs, often you can't get it the next time because they've changed the hops in it or whatever. But this is a black IPA, very hoppy, very bitter.
Yeah, I'm reading here so this is another dark beer, but I see they've got India Pale Ale on the tag, and then they've got hops and then a space for where they can print a different type of hops.
Every
they've
single
got dates,
time.
they've got different, they can put in different alcohol, different IBUs, and then they've got black here on the top. So I'm guessing that they experiment quite a bit with whatever hops they got lying around or whatever they want, and if it's going to be the normal version or black version, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's never the same. So again, it is a problem if a bottle store likes a beer and maybe that month's or that batch was made with Azaka and Cascade, then the next one might be with Centennial and something else, you know. But that's the thing, they're sticking to what they believe in, and it's not to be in Pick and Pay and Checkers and stuff like that. What is the IBU on this one? Because this is very bitter. Even through the
IBU
dark.
68.
Yeah.
Alcohol 6.5.
So this is probably one of the most bitter beers that Troy's ever had on the show. And the sort of roasted malt should cancel that out a little bit with a bit of sweetness, but it's you still taste that bitterness.
It actually depends on when you add that black malt.
Okay.
So you get the roasted malt, and too much roasted malt, brewers usually add 5% to the grain bill. But if you add anything more over 10%, it can contribute quite a harsh bitterness. But if you add it, this is me getting beer nerd on you, if you add that dark roasted malt to the end of your mash, to the end of when you're extracting all that sugar, you actually just take out the color.
Yeah.
And that's a technique which I've just learned recently as a homebrewer. Anyway, that's the only beer nerd stuff you're going to get for today.
As a non-brewer or very bad brewer of basically Cape Town's most expensive grey water, how do you actually measure? How do you measure IBU?
It's a theoretical value, but I'll let Troy tell you because I'm not a brewer. I had to make a conscious choice whether to become a brewer or a seller/drinker. And
You're a far better drinker than you could ever be a brewer, Martin. Far better beer.
I don't think I have the patience.
We applaud you for that.
I think Troy has done phenomenally well with also going full circle. Being in the beer industry because of a love of beer, then moving out of the beer industry because of an even bigger love of beer, starting a radio show while we're blowing smoke up Troy's bum here, because of a love of beer. And you know that's what it's all about. It's as long as you stay involved with what you're passionate about, love it. Beer. It doesn't matter what form of it you're in. So Troy has to become president of the Southeasters. He must know his stuff, you know.
Well,
I think
honest, there
Martin
was no one else.
No one put their hand up.
Yeah.
I think Martin might want to take you out for dinner and a show later.
As long as there's beer.
Nice seafood dinner. That's fine. Thanks, Martin. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, no, it's. I'm here to educate and entertain and grow the good word. I got
IBUs. IBUs.
So there is a specific formula, and don't ask me to say that because I don't know what it is. But it's all got to do with the oil content of your hop. And your hop oils are called lupulin oils, and each hop cone has a different amount and different alpha acid, and they all contribute into a different equation, and depends on how much you add into your beer, and that converts with the boiling and the science and the biology and yada yada yada. Science.
So I consider myself scienced.
So if someone asks you what's an IBU, it's an international bittering unit. It's usually measured out of 100, but there are some brewers who beat the equation.
Triggerfish Kraken.
Who make 1,500 IBUs, which it's all about with, you know, you can only, your taste buds can only pick up a certain amount. So you could say 1,000 or 100, it's still going to be extremely bitter.
Yeah.
But cheers. This is a delicious local beer.
It wouldn't be sessionable for me because of that bitterness, but it's definitely sort of an occasion beer. Try it once, and they do make a pale ale, a normal pale ale, and I mean an APA, and they do make a normal IPA that isn't black.
I'll go back to this if you've had a lot of pale ales, you've had a lot of IPAs, but now you want just at another little level, and this is a good dark beer. It's bitter, it's hoppy, it's not too heavy.
But it is nice. It is nice to try it. I mean, I don't know if you guys have noticed this at all. It might just be kind of us beer geeks that really enjoy this. But you remember back in the day, if you would be invited for dinner, you would basically arrive very graciously with a bottle of wine because that's what you would do. And now I find whenever I've got this one uncle in particular. Whenever I arrive there, I basically arrive with a 6-pack of a different bunch of beers that he made out of tried, and we basically sit and you kind of try a bunch of different beers together rather than sitting through a bottle of wine.
You're 100%.
God forbid.
I've definitely noticed that changing.
It happens a lot now. It's just a far more interesting way to go.
Just to switch this a little bit, like if someone rocked up with a bottle of wine and he actually knew a little bit about that wine, was a little bit involved in the wine industry, and he said, guys, this is a great Pinotage. Okay, I'm not a Pinotage drinker, but this guy seems to know his stuff, and he obviously has some credit, so let's enjoy this.
No, absolutely. And I mean, that's why, if Dan Nichol's been the MC of the Festival of Beer since the beginning.
Almost all 8 years, yeah.
You must let me know when he gets a throat infection, because I'm there, guys.
Are you there?
I'm ready to step up.
When he does his the boat race challenge, we may need to call on you, T-Bone. Yeah, that'll be happening this year, no doubt. Yeah. I'm sure.
T-Bone only tastes beer, though. He doesn't down it.
Yeah. No, I don't know if you want me on the team.
We might need an MC while Dan's busy with us, whatever.
But just getting back to that, I've got a couple of friends of mine that are like my guinea pigs, and it literally is to get that proper man on the street reaction. Like 6 new beers, been sitting in my fridge for ages, never tasted any of them, don't know what to expect. Bring it to a braai, pour it around four different glasses and just watch their reaction, Then they go, oh, what was that? Either that was very nice, that was disgusting, or tell us more. And it's a very good reflection, actually, that even some of their palates are getting a bit more educated. But yeah, Murray, I also think that's the problem too, is a lot of people go to a braai or go to a nice dinner and they don't consider that a good 750ml bottle of aged Belgian beer from Roland Liquors or Liquor City Claremont or Den Anker is as good, if not better, than buying a bottle of Beyerskloof Pinotage to pour at supper. There's, it could probably pair with more different foods. It's more of an experience because some people...
It's more likely to be enjoyed by more of the people there.
Exactly. And I think that's the other thing that we don't know as South Africans is beer isn't there meant to be gulped and had 20 of in a night, although that's what most of us do.
And you're very good at it.
So are you. So at least I'll move on to something else later. So that's another problem that we have in South Africa, is don't drink your beer to get as many into you and to quench your thirst as much as you can. Drink it to enjoy it. Taste 7-8 different beers in a night and throw caution to the wind when people say, oh, if I mix my beers, I'm going to get a headache. Drink them slowly, taste them with some strong cheese, some chocolate brownie, some whatever.
Gents, I think it's, we were meant to have a music break ages ago, but I think it's just going to go on 1 o'clock now. And theoretically, statistically speaking, there are probably a handful of people out there thinking, let's have some music right now, even though they're enjoying this conversation. But let's cut to a little toilet break, a little music break, and we can keep the gears going. God knows we've got some good beers coming on the way. So 7 minutes past 1 o'clock on a Tuesday. You listen to Hashtag Beer Time with me, T-Bone Troy. We're joined in the studio by Martin Tucker, renowned Cape Town beer man, beer merchant, I suppose you could say, and Murray Turner, social media beer guru. I suppose just social media guru.
Oh God, why do you have to say that?
I know it's.
Why can't you say?
There's nothing else to call you. Nice guy. Just nice guy.
Yeah, okay, I'll go with that. You're a nice guy too.
What were we talking about? There were two things I wanted to talk about. We've got a competition which we want to talk about. But
yeah,
before we
let's
talk
do-
about the competition,
Okay, no.
before we talk about the competition, I'm going to crack open another beer. But I want to know, Martin, this Friday is a very important day for Western Province Rugby. We played amazingly last weekend.
Yes.
Let's give a quick shout out to the boys in blue.
Well done.
Your
lekker ding.
Do you think whoever wins this game on Friday
Is it
basically
Friday
wins?
or Saturday?
I hope it's Friday because I've made plans to watch on Friday.
I'm almost thinking it might be Saturday.
I'm pretty sure it's Saturday. I can only say that
But hang
because
on.
I'm going
Troy
to
reaches for his phone.
I'm going to give a little side punt. I know we hadn't talked about this, but on I only know this because there's a function that we run called the Players for Players. There's a group of us. I hope you don't mind me doing this, T-Bone.
No, you must.
Punt it.
But
Punt away.
a group of four of us that started it used to be a barefoot bowls day back in the day, and we basically just get a bunch of guys together, raise a bit of money that all goes to the Chris Berger Pedro Jackson Fund. Anyone that knows anything about rugby will know about the fund, but they
Very
basically
good cause.
Fourth
very
year,
good
fifth
cause.
year. What is it? It's like also.
This is my fifth year, and it's been going for 7 years.
21st of October.
21st of October. It's
at
on
5
Saturday.
PM.
Correct.
Sorry, Troy, change your plans, pal.
So if you've made a plan if you don't have plans
I'm
for
gonna-
Saturday, Troy, come to the Players for Players.
I'm rocking up to the game on Friday, and there's going to be no one there. Wayne,
Well, you'll be there.
I need tickets for Saturday, please. Nick, if you're listening, the game is not on Friday. It's on Saturday. Nick's another mate of mine. Okay, let's. We can continue talking about all these things, but I think we do need to open this IPA called it says Incarnation, and it's from Four Hands Brewing Co. in the States.
Not my favorite. Not my
Saint-
favorite label.
St. Louis. Yeah, it's a bit biblical.
Bit biblical.
Are you not a praying man, Martin Tucker?
Not about beer, no. Beer helps me pray.
Oh, this is very fruity.
And it's got the hop. So something interesting that Troy said while we're doing a bit of educational work on here
It's always educational on hashtag beer time.
is that lupulus, which is what Troy said, is humulus lupulus. Is
The closest relative.
It's the closest relative to the acha. So the resin.
Was that Dracha, Martin?
Yeah, the reason that people derive from marijuana to is the same thing that gives hops that resiny aroma and flavor and imparts a lot of it into your beers. So it is the closest cousin to it. However, I don't know many brewers that have smoked it.
You can brew with weed.
Yes.
I mean, I've heard from friends who've.
Don't worry, I don't think there are any policemen listening. I don't know if internet radio works so well.
I've got a friend. Let's call him Prig. Prig.
From Banana Jam.
Who's experimented before and.
Sorry, that's Banana Jam.
Yeah, I know. You have a sip of this thing and it knocks you for six.
I remember it quite well.
You need to be
Yeah.
in the taxi. You need to be, or in a bed. No, this is all speculation. I mean, I've never actually tried it.
So the one thing that I'm quite impressed with on this is, again, where we could learn in South Africa.
Yeah.
All the government warning stuff, as we have, the name of the beer, the percentage alcohol, which is very high, 7%.
Really?
The barcode, the obviously the actual logo or the package design, and then right at the top, it's got a little cool thing saying
Pairings.
yes,
Food
and
pairings.
it tells you very simply. If you can't read, there's 2 pictures of chilies, and then it says spicy food, and if you can read, it says grilled beef, and then a picture of a cow. So that's something maybe our guys should look at as well, because as I mentioned earlier, I believe, and this is only my opinion because I'm fat and I eat a lot, that
And that is your
beer,
clue for the competition coming
beer
up.
actually pairs a lot better with food than wine does.
I 100% agree with you.
And I would go against Here is a challenge that I'm going to lay down. Any sommelier in the country who would like to take me on in a food pairing challenge with beer, I bet you the beer will pair better with wine.
Sure, I'm excited.
Yeah.
When can we do this? I think we need to set it up for Cape Town Festival.
It's a lot easier to bring a bottle of beer into Spur. And no, I mean, dead serious. I believe that we could put up a tasting station. We could get top chefs, home cooks, anyone doing it, including takeaways. And I bet you that beer will pair better.
No, it's 100% does. You just got more variety in the beer world, different flavor spectrums. Don't get me wrong. Wine does pair well with lots of food, but yeah, beer is just.
Is there something like guava-y, pineapple-y,
Okay, let's go
mango-y?
back to this Four Hands Brewing Company IPA. I'm getting a bit of a. There's a new beer style called the New England IPA, and this is not that hazy, but it's got a bit of a lactose. I wouldn't be surprised if there's lactose in the ingredients. Just read, is there ingredients there anyway? But it's got a bit of a sweetness, more sweetness than bitterness. Not in a bad way, not overpowering.
No.
I'm not getting the.
Does it have ingredients on there?
No, very surprisingly, this beer doesn't have ingredients, which means that South Africa is actually a bit ahead.
Well, it's
Of
probably
this
just
stuff.
this one that they just decided not to. They probably thought, why should we put the same thing that everyone else puts on there? I
From
suppose-
St. Louis, Missouri.
I think legally you have to put on.
You do, you are supposed to, unless this is just not a recognized brewery. Yeah.
It's got that marijuana you talked about earlier.
Feeling kind of dizzy.
And this is 12 fluid ounces, and it looks exactly the same size as the other can, so I think we might have solved our mystery.
12 fluid ounces.
12 fluid ounces equals 355 mils.
Okay. Well, there the Americans go with their throwing out the metric system. Guys, I don't know. I don't want to get too involved in the cans and the labels, but this can is amazing, but the label does need work. You won't be able to see what that says on a
No, not on the shelf.
But the beer's good. So let's not judge the can by its label, the beer by its can label. This is a good beer. It's delicious.
And
Fruity.
it's 7%, and they hit that high level of alcohol very well.
You don't have that. It's hard for them to do that a lot of the time.
Yeah,
you find like
you don't taste it at all, not like a Belgian sort of triple. But yeah, very weird. Like I can imagine these oaks being goths or something and just like, yeah, man, I'm going to make the coolest beer ever. Design me a label.
It's actually a little bit. It's not watered down, but it's just very sessionable.
which is hard for a 7%
We're not
beer
we're
to
not
be.
really selling this beer, are we? But it's if you. Had
I feel
to
like we're
have
kind
this
of on
beer-
the line. We can't say it's good and we can't really say it's bad.
Yeah, it's maybe it's not ticking the boxes of what we feel is an India Pale Ale and American West
Yeah.
Coast IPA.
You know, like
it's
those-
more of a sessionable IPA or a
Correct.
heavy pale ale.
It's
I mean, when
not
I
the
bought
best
those-
beer we've had today.
No. I mean, when you compare that to those other beers that I bought the last time I was here, sort of those, the Dogfish, what was it, Dogfish 60-minute IPA. I mean,
that was
different league to
No, different.
that. The Goths did not make that beer. The Goths did make this beer.
Celtic Goths, I think.
Celtic Goths.
Gentlemen, competition time.
T-Bone, take it away.
Competition time. Okay, so we're going to try this. We haven't really done this on the show before, so this is the first. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, we should probably get some music, some themed music, but it's too late now.
Maybe Eye of the Tiger.
Okay, this is the first thing that popped up, so I'm just going to play this. Okay, it's competition time, ladies and gentlemen. Space. What? We'll play this one instead.
These
Okay.
are the voyages of the starship.
Competition time on Two Oceans Vibe. We are going to be giving away 2 tickets to the Cape Town Festival of Beer. Would you like to see Martin Tucker in a Speedo? Would you like to see Murray wearing goggles? Yes. Cape Town, I'm just going with this. If you want 2 tickets to the Cape Town Festival of Beer, you need to go onto Facebook. On Facebook, you will find #BeerTime. that is my profile page. And on that profile page, you will see today's blog post on Cape Town Festival Beer featuring Murray and Martin. You need to make a comment in the comment section. We're not too sure what that comment is, but I think...
I think...
what is Murray's pen size? No. Tell us what you're looking forward to about the Cape Town Festival Beer. It could be anything from seeing celebrities such as Martin and Murray, or
Dan Nichols' boat race, or any of the food stalls, or the more than 60 different breweries there and the 200 beers they're bringing. Could be the live bands. It could be seeing T-Bone Troy up close and personal.
This is
maybe
true.
even getting him to sign your breast.
Yeah.
I know Jason Slinger is very excited about that.
If you find Slinky at the festival, you get beer for the whole weekend.
Wow, okay. I'm going to be looking for Slinky. So guys, go onto Facebook, go onto hashtag Beer Time Facebook page and comment on the latest post. And I suppose we've got 2 tickets to give away.
We've got 4 tickets to give away.
Wow, okay, we're getting generous. So I suppose the first person to comment will get a ticket. Can we do that? And then
we can do whatever we want.
Hey, you know what? It's my show, and we can do whatever we want.
And then what we will try and do is that just before the show ends, we will try and announce who the winners are.
Sure,
we can do that too.
I've never done this before, so this is great.
Here we are, breaking boundaries.
Breaking boundaries. Cool. This is exciting. I'm excited to see who's going to get these 2 free tickets. Shit, I should have probably put my name down.
I'd like you to ask for a beer in Swahili.
Okay, so if someone asks for a beer in Swahili,
Someone asks for a beer in Swahili, you get the tickets.
Should we kill the space music now?
This is actually Indiana Jones. This is adventure.
Oh, it is Indiana Jones.
Before he eats the snake's brains.
Yeah.
So Troy, if I can just
Let's turn that
say something.
Martin, hold on. There we go.
Martin, you've never been a man to just say just one thing.
No, so the other thing is
Talk to me.
that
It's just you and I.
don't you think it's we really like the look of cans from overseas, bottles from overseas. We generally try and bring beers back from overseas and taste them and compare them to our beers.
It's one of the most exciting things to do when you go this.
It is. I love doing it myself, especially in some countries like Belgium and America. And as I said, when people I know come back from Canada, I always get some beers. But like, are we doing enough to market our beers besides some of the bigger guys like CBC, who's got a good relationship with their partner who's from, I think, Denmark or Sweden, and Abro Brewing, and Devil's Peak, who now have partners overseas and are exporting to England and the UK quite widely, and I think Holland and a few other places. Do you think we're doing enough, like, we don't know whether guys in America are actively sitting and going like, damn, I'd love to try a beer from from South Africa, and like we sit here and we just think that the sun shines out of the Americans' asses because they make some good beers. Like, are we doing enough to say, come and taste a King's Blockhouse IPA or a stout from Triggerfish or a lager from
What
Stellenbosch?
What if you had to take 4 beers to the States to represent South Africa? What beers would you take?
So it's very difficult to say whether I took them by style or whether I took them by which beers made the best.
Just to narrow it down, one from each brewery.
Definitely King's Blockhouse IPA.
Okay.
Although it uses all American hops. So again, they could get a West Coast IPA that tastes pretty similar over there. But if it's made as well, then yeah. In the old days, Wolfgang's Red Weiss from Paulana, it was mother's milk. It's probably my favorite beer of all time.
That's 2.
It's so difficult doing this. If you take some of our Weisses and
If you were going to take a lager, which lager would it be?
So the lager I probably find myself drinking the most.
Can I answer?
Yeah.
CBC Pilsner?
I was going to say CBC Pilsner is probably the most awarded lager style beer in the country. Jack Black makes a decent lager, a bit malty. Alpha Lager won best lager on show. I don't think our examples of lagers are as world class as our examples of the IPA and that. So I would actually take like a a big mainstream beer. I would take a Black Label or a Castle overseas. It's bitter. It does everything that it's supposed to do, you know. But what I would take overseas, which I believe that we are quite unique with here, is something like a. Have any of you ever met Eric van Heerden from Triggerfish Brewing? So not all of Eric's beers are always perfect, but he's like the nutty professor of South African brewing. And then I'd have to say like JC Stain is probably one of the most technically correct and good brewers. And then Wolfgang is a genius, especially when it comes to, you know, German and European style beers. So if I could have like a hybrid of something that those three could brew, like Wolfgang just making sure it sticks to what it's supposed to stick to, JC actually brewing it, and Eric coming up with some insane recipe, I think that would be a very good beer. But the other beer that I was going to say was, it's called Crazy Diamond. Did you ever have that from
bottle.
Eric?
The big bottle.
The big bottle.
Was it a sour?
It was a double. It was a Belgian style double. Really, really good. So that's what I would take. What would your four be?
No, well, the reason I asked you that is that it's not easy to answer that question.
No.
And you're thinking, okay, what are the good beers that are world class? And then secondly, what are the Americans going to appreciate? And I think taking beers now to the States, you're only going to get the factor of, wow, these are beers made in Africa. You're not going to, unfortunately, you're not going to get, maybe someone can correct me, but you're not going to get the factor of, my word, this is an amazing, unbelievable beer. Okay, maybe I'm going to contradict myself here and say, like, if you took the CVC Pilsner over there, people would be like, this is a great Pilsner. But I don't, it's not an even, just to go back to what you originally asked, it's not an even transfer of us getting American beers into South Africa and Americans getting South African beers into there. I know that Jack Black experiments at getting South African beer into the States and New York particularly. And that worked, you know, because people are like, oh wow, this is ironically a South African beer but with an American name. Because Jack Black, the actual person, John Jack Black, was from
He's a bootlegger.
New York.
Jack Black's now. Cease and desist from Jack Daniels.
But and there was a reason why I was going with this. I think we are doing enough to promote South African beer, but I think we're doing enough to educate our industry. By us bringing in all these foreign beers that we're not used to, we're actually educating ourselves and this is the hope, that I'm on radio now, that I'm talking to people, that I'm about to drink a blueberry ale, that I've just had a Nachi IPA, that I've had this black lager. The hope is that I'm educating the public, that I'm educating brewers, and I'm showing them, guys, there are these other beers that you need to drink that are world class, that by getting in these American beers, we actually aim in a little bit higher every time. We're never settling as a South African beer community. We're always trying to push ourselves to the next big thing.
But these guys push themselves. Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Like,
I kind of ran out of steam.
If we can't brew that blueberry ale that I brought is originally a wheat beer, which some might classify as an American style of Weiss. And if we can't brew a decent Weiss, how can we already move on to the blueberry infusion in it, or the adding it as an adjunct? So that's my whole point, is get the basics right and use these American beers as examples. But how do we know these American beers are actually great examples of it? Are we so uneducated here that we still think that Hawaii 5-0 and Magnum PI are the greatest series of all time? You know, that's what happens. But when you get Netflix, all of a sudden your opinion changes, and there's Narcos and a million other series that you go, yes, why isn't this on TV? This is awesome. And that's our problem, you know. Stick to what you're good at. And if you're not good at something, practice until you are good at it. So that would be my big thing, is we all try and copy the Americans, we all try and copy the Belgians, But like, why have we never created our own unique style? Like instead of an APA, an African pale ale.
This is what we're doing. This is what we want to do.
Yeah, and that they bring it across and they go, "Jeez, man, this is unbelievable. This is the next big beer thing," and they start brewing our stuff.
I think that I'm going to open this while we're talking.
Love that noise.
Our hops have been getting a lot of attention lately, but I do agree. I think we need to. Wow, there's a lot of blueberry there. It's like a blueberry muffin.
Muffin tastes like that.
Yeah, I think there's been people experimenting with Fynbos, with sorghum.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the sorghum, yeah.
And there's someone else.
And there's been some
I know
rooibos.
Sequoia from Joburg makes traditional kumbo tea, and he's trying to get that commercialized, which I think is a great idea.
Wow, this is like those old Oatso Easy packs. Do you remember the Oatso?
Yes.
That's actually, yeah, this is...
Before rugby
Did they have
matches on a Saturday.
Did they have Oatso
This
Easy in
smells-
Zimbabwe, mate?
We didn't have cereal in Zimbabwe, let alone oats so easy.
At the moment, there's nothing in Zimbabwe. There's tiger fish. So Troy, but you haven't
tiger
actually
in Africa.
you haven't actually answered those four beers.
What beers would I take?
Yeah. It's hard, eh? It's
I
not
would
as
take-
easy as you
Cracky
think.
Martin, this was a terrible pour from you.
I would
That's a
say
very good ball. Another bit of education we need to do.
I would take the something from Woodstock. My favorite Woodstock beer would be I really enjoyed their Belgian Amber. I enjoyed that one. Just to be different, I would take Devil's Peak Juicy Lucy. I would take the old Jack Black Amber Ale.
What about the Baobab
Lumberjack.
Weiss? Baobab Weiss from Drifter.
Never had it.
Have you never had it?
Never had
Never
the
had
Baobab
it.
Vice.
It was good. It was a collab. I think it was with Zocala.
Yeah.
It was very good.
So color.
And that would be...
So just getting back to it, so the one good thing
And the CBC Pilsner.
and the CBC Pilsner. So the one good
I'm
thing
probably
is
offended
that
someone by not mentioning the beers. But I'm
no,
sorry.
that's the
I
whole
love you
thing.
guys.
Riot Valve IPA, I think is really good, but I don't think it compares to King's Blockhouse if I was taking it overseas. Consistency and what it's been for the last however many years. A Darling Bone Crusher, great example of a fit, but super up and down. Doesn't compare to a Hoegaarden when you think that you can get a Hoegaarden in any country and it tastes the same. So Black Mist from Darling as well, one of the original beers.
Okay, now we're talking Black
It
Mist.
was it was great. It was world class, but it was so the point I'm trying to make in a very roundabout way is that we can't physically choose 4 world class beers, not because our barriers or our boundaries keep shifting and because we're tasting better and better beers, but because there literally aren't 4 beers that will, if 4 people come to South Africa and they taste these 4 beers, that all 4 of them say those are world class and the best that I've ever had. Whereas that black lager that we actually tasted is probably one of the best beers I've tasted. I really loved it.
You know, it was really surprising. I'm just talking about Wednesday evening at the Festival Beer media launch again. Is that at the end of it,
CTFOB.
so, hashtag CTFOB17.
17.
But at the
There we
end
go.
of, once all the media had left and we were basically sitting there having a couple of drinks, I went off
Finishing
to
off
the
the
bar
beers.
to get around for everyone, and there were a couple of American guys there,
Murray didn't pay for it.
a little bit older than us. Why would I? And I was ordering beers, and I couldn't help notice that these guys there from the States. And do you want to hazard a guess what they ordered?
I'll say it because it stood out to all of us, even if we weren't looking at the same time. They were drinking quarts of Black Label
I
and
was just
Castle
about to say
Light.
Black Label.
They were drinking Castle Light. And I found that absolutely staggering that these guys come the whole way from the States with all the selection they've got there and the beer house
But
selection
why
that
do you
they've got.
find it staggering? That's my whole point. Is it still a well-made beer?
Oh, no, I'm not saying it's not a well-made beer at all. I mean, it's a good beer. It's just with the variety and the options you've got. Well, I suppose for them it might be us kind of
Those
going over
guys
there.
could live in a trailer park in America for all we know.
That's true. And I mean, it might be the equivalent
They
of...
could be on the 8 Mile next to where Eminem grew up, and they peroxide their hair, and their mother walks the streets at night. Like that's where so to them a lager is awesome, but because they've got dollars and because they come to to South Africa, we think that they are the equivalent of a South African who knows a little bit about beer, who goes overseas. Because 90% again of all South Africans will go to America and order a Budweiser because hey, we're in the States.
Yep.
Now Budweiser owns SAB. Like that's
And
ridiculous.
actually on
That's
that-
rubbish.
So how do we think? Has anyone seen anyone enjoying a Budweiser recently? Because I see that now, and you can now pick up Bud in the bottle stores.
Remember, beers are of everyone's own opinion, and it's like being in a really dodgy canoe, very close to water.
Trying to picture that analogy, but to answer your question, I have had some King of Beer, Budweiser, and it works for people who want the watered down, least offensive kind of beer, and it will work. Will it work in South Africa? Would it beat out Castle Light or Castle or anything else? Black Label? Definitely not. But I don't think that's AB InBev's goal.
Strategy. No.
They want Africa. They don't care about South Africa. South Africa is just a port for them to just kind of set up base and then to move up into Africa. That's what I see.
It's just been interesting seeing all these different beers kind of arriving on the scene.
I watched a video last night. Sorry to interrupt you. There's a video. The American Craft Association. Sorry, the American Homebrewers Association.
Is starting
They
the
started
Thunder
a
Fund.
biggest Thunder Fund.
Yeah, they need $219 billion
They're going to buy out. They want to try and buy out AB InBev.
because they've bought out 10 brewers in the States.
So all the small guys are now trying to buy. It's obviously, I don't think it will happen, but they're obviously trying to raise what Martin said,
$19 billion.
But there's a video going around, and it's quite amusing and entertaining.
So again, if you're one of those listeners out there who happens to have $219 billion,
Buy tickets for the festival.
Buy the festival of beer.
Yeah, you can do that too.
Guys, this blueberry ale, it's delicious. It's a wheat beer. It's very similar to what we had last week on the show with Wolfgang and his raspberry and his peach beers. That was 97% wheat beer, and then the 3% was fruits pulp or puree. And I assume that this would be a very similar kind of recipe. I'm picking up that oats that you get in the morning, or the blueberry muffin from.
I do find it a little
bakeries.
bit, doesn't have a huge amount of body to it. It's kind of,
It's very light. But maybe that's.
but it doesn't, it's 4.5%, so it's not,
I don't think you would
light.
want something too heavy with these kind of beers. Otherwise, it'll just get ridiculously overboard.
But again, think about it. It serves a purpose. It's not to drink 10 of them. It's just very friendly, unoverbearing, and different. Although they didn't do as good a job of masking the blueberry and blending it into the beer as those guys did with that Mandarina, which was superb.
And at 7%.
And at 7%. Troy, just going back to what you were saying.
Yes, hit me.
So, and Murray, to a degree, is Budweiser and all these different beers are unique to their countries. And that's where they started. Budweiser is actually originally from Czech Republic. And that Budweiser brewery in Czech Republic has nothing to do with Budweiser, which was started by the Bush family many years ago, which was then swallowed up by AB, or not Anheuser-Busch, but InBev from Brazil and Belgium, and then taken over. So these guys
you are spot on.
these guys who've now bought SAB, and it's now part of AB InBev. I posted something on Facebook the other day which got a few comments on it, and I said that in 20 or 30 or maybe 50 years' time, there won't be any South African brands of beer left anymore in that stable, which includes Castle Lights, Castle Lager, Black Label, Hansa, Lion Lager, etc. And I still stick by my words, although having seen what's going on in the hospitality and bottle store industry, or off-con and on-con industry at the moment, and how much money AB InBev are throwing at it and discounting their products, I don't think 50 years is off. I think it could be closer to 10 or 15 years. I think Castle Lager will be one of those things that they make that sits at the back of the shelf that, yes, that was really cool getting it. But again, we have now been, South African pride and joy has now been bought by a giant global corporation who has to make shareholders money. And why aren't they taking Castle Light to America or to Brazil or to Belgium? Why aren't they taking Black Label? You know, why are they bringing Budweiser here, Corona here, Stella Artois here, and flooding the market with that stuff? And that's what I don't quite get, you know. And it just shows that they didn't buy it to improve these beers or to get them into Africa or to take them around the world. They bought it to use their economy of scale to get rid of those beers eventually, and just to make the whole world drink what they sell.
I would say, I would argue that South Africans are very passionate individuals, and I would also say that they're almost, dare I say it, somewhat educated in the beer history. You know, SAB has been around for 125 years. They've grown up with Castle. They've grown up with Castle Lights. They had Lion Lager at one stage. It comes back every now and again. I think the South African beer drinker is going to be very patriotic, and there would be a huge outcry if Castle Lights,
Castle Light in particular,
if that had to disappear, it wouldn't disappear. I think it would be just too much. It's too much of a ingrained.
Lion Lager disappeared for 20 years.
Was it the National Homebrewers Trophy last year that, when put out to the public, what was the top beer? Was it not Black Label?
No, it was this year.
No,
Was it this year?
This year, Black Label.
It was Black Label.
But yeah, that was just the people's choice.
Yeah, it was the people's choice, but ultimately people's choice is it's the majority.
Lion Lager.
Let's while we're talking, let's introduce our next beer.
This is very exciting.
Martin,
I'm excited
thank
about
you.
this one.
Sierra Nevada Porter.
Thank you.
Sierra
Thank you.
Nevada. I just want to
Thank you.
repeat that. Sierra. Am I saying it right? Sierra
Nevada.
Sierra
It's a
Nevada.
range of mountains in America.
Oh,
Thank
and
you
this
to
is-
whoever has put up with Martin Tucker as a friend and actually agreed to bring this back for him.
Yes.
Martin, were you saving this for a special event?
This is the special event I'm saving it for.
Very good.
I asked someone maybe a year ago to bring this to me, saying that I was going to be on Troy's program on Two Oceans Vibe, and
And they delivered.
they delivered.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you didn't use it for any other beer drinking occasion. I'm glad you bought it for the hashtag beer time. This is Sierra Nevada is predominantly known for their pale ale, which is the flagship of beers to measure any pale ale against. So now they've
Why is that?
Because it's so good.
It
I
is so
think
good, but I
it's-
mean, when did that become the?
I think it's been around for a while, and I think it kind of set the benchmark, and then people just followed on, and it's just one of those things.
And it's got a great green label that every time I see Devil's Peaks Pale Ale, and it's got a green label, I always think of Sierra Nevada. But they make some crazy, wild, out there beers as well.
Oh my word!
So a porter is probably my favorite style of beer.
It needs to be more in South Africa. So
Yeah.
let's
So a porter is a much lighter version of a stout, in theory. And in the old days, if you look at how the names came about, just a bit of more beer
history.
bullshit, is that a porter used to carry your luggage, and porter was strong, but he wasn't stout. The guys who carried it were much stronger. So the stout was the stronger version of the porter, and it's supposed to be a lot lighter than a stout. But again, in South Africa, we just don't have the difference between a sweet stout, a dry stout, a porter, and it's another place where we suffer. If we drank more porters in South Africa, I can tell you the whole of South Africa would fall in love with this style.
No, I completely. I'm on your side there. Just to follow up with your porter story, I think we're talking pre 19th century. The porter was the drink of the day. There were only dark beers, and the porter was the workman's beer after working around London, lugging cases. I mean, London was a port back then, and so they had to.
My word.
It's delicious, hey? And that's I like to bring in the pale ale name. When people say, why is this called a pale ale, when it's not really that pale? But back in the day, 19th century, when they came out with this light pale ale, it was a lot paler in color to the porter, which was the common beer of the time. But yeah, Martin, I'm with you on this 100%.
This is unbelievable.
We need more porters. This is... Oh, it's got the chocolatey, it's got the roasted, but when you drink it, it's light,
Yeah.
it's smooth.
But again, do you get that Milo? Does anyone remember when they drank a Milo and they left some of those chocolate sprinkles floating on the top and they crunched in your mouth and
I
they
used to,
gave
I
you
used to
that?
pour it on the Milo afterwards.
So again, guys, this is like, are the brewers so much better and that's why this beer tastes so good? Have they made it more times and they're just more practiced and well versed in it? Or is it just because we're naive and we think it's too difficult to make or we don't have good enough ingredients?
I just don't think there are enough guys trying to actually do it.
Because this is unbelievable. I
Yeah,
would
it's like,
drink
well,
this.
it's, we had this conversation earlier about, what has the trend in beers been over the time that the Festival of Beer's been going? And you yourself said the guys have just gotten much better at doing the beers. They might be bringing the same beers, but those beers now taste so much better. And if we had enough guys doing these porters and everything else, in a couple of years, we're going to have beers somewhere at least very close to this, if not just as good.
It's
My
a
5 cents.
It's a pity that Oaks like Red Sky have closed down because I feel that their porter was on a good track to be.
So what has
Vampire.
happened with him?
So he's now making some gin, I believe, but he's originally a winemaker, and he's going to go back to making wine. Old Mark Goldsworthy and his wife Kelly, and
Such a lekker
such
couple.
great guys, and they just got a new tasting room. But it's just the fact of South Africa. So one of the things we haven't got to talking about here is the outlook for beer in South Africa, and I think maybe we should. And it's purely opinion based because none of us are actuaries and none of us can see any trends and have definitive information.
And because
But-
we've each had 2 or 3 beers each at this point.
There's 6 on the table, but I see how you're splitting it. So I think the middle is falling out of the beer market in South Africa. I think a lot of the guys who didn't make it into big brewers and the guys who were bigger than smaller brewers aren't surviving any longer, keeping their head above the water. And I think the smaller guys are either not in need of as much money or as many sales, and it's either a hobby or it's part of their business to just not make millions. And the big guys have got huge investment. They're growing by the day, and they're the only guys that are capitalizing on making cheaper craft beer and selling it to more people who are becoming aware of it. And I don't think experimenting and choosing different styles and then changing your whole brewery around and then becoming a distillery and all of that and giving, or not giving up, but just not carrying on with it anymore is the way forward. I think you should just stick to what you do. And if your brewery makes one beer that is unbelievable, just make one beer. Don't think you got to make 7 or 8 different beers or 6 or 4 or this oak makes pale ales and this guy makes lager style beer. Just make one beer that if you can grow it enough and you can market it enough and you can sell it enough and you can get enough people buying into it, that eventually guys from here to Joburg are asking for this beer and it's always selling out. And that's what you should do. Not everyone has the capacity of a CBC or a Jack Black or a Darling or a Devil's Peak. And that's where I think we go wrong in South Africa. And then they convert to ciders. And then they can't do ciders, so they start making hybrids. And then they start making gin and tonic in kegs. And, it's guys, either stick with what you know or don't do it and go back to doing whatever you were doing before.
Yeah.
Because that's another reason these breweries are successful. A microbrewery in America is anything less than, is it 30,000 barrels?
It's huge. Yeah, it's a lot.
2.3 million
Liters.
liters.
Yeah, so it's about 30,000 British barrels, PBLs, which
stands
are
to be corrected again.
no, it's about they're about 100 liters a barrel, so that's 3 million. So 3 million liters is spot on. If 3 years ago, our whole microbrewing industry did 3 million liters, I would have been amazed.
Well, we when we went and spoke to Devil's Peak, we went and shot with JC for the Festival of Beer, and he showed us one corner of the brewery now that what they brew there in one day is what they were brewing is what they brewed an entire year of their first production.
Exactly. So that's my
5
whole
years
point.
ago.
Is it's so tiny, and either you got to be willing to persevere, or you've got to be like these breweries in the States. To be massive, like them, they're not massive compared to SAB and Newlands even, or they're not massive compared to whatever. They literally have every pub, every bottle store, everyone in their 50 or 60 or 80 or 100k radius that lists their beers. There's still too many beers in South Africa, or too many breweries in South Africa, where their next door neighbor's a bottle store and they don't even stock their beer. You know, and I think that's the big problem. And that's also why we don't have porters, because you go and tell the oak who owns a bottle store, I've got this really nice dark beer for you, and he goes, sorry, pal, none of my oaks will buy that from you. You know, and it's even worse in Limpopo, in Uppington, in Kuruman, in Toyandu, they don't know.
Sure. Well, there are a few things that I could get back to you on there, but it is true. The South African public do need to be educated on what's out there. There's no real answer to that. The one thing I can say is that, South Africa's a little bit behind, or a little bit not as advanced in terms of the size of America and the markets. I think America has a very big middle class who can afford premium inverted commas beer. So our middle market is
We've got our
minute.
markets are very different.
It's tiny.
You see,
and
this
I just this is just from what I've observed in the States. The States, you've just got millions of people and you can have something that's a percentage of a market, but that 1% of a market is just
It's huge.
1 million people.
exactly.
So and our 1% of our market is 100,000 people. So that already gives us a bit of a disadvantage. But it's all through education and learning and growing the brand and speaking the good word, and that's what's going.
But take 10% of the American market. So let's say America's 350 million people, right? They've got 2,500, 3,000 breweries. Okay, so that means that's 1% of, let's say, all the people you were saying. So it's 0.1% is breweries. In South Africa, we've got 53 million people, and we've got about 250 microbreweries. Okay? So we've got a higher percentage in a ratio to what America's got. But, and this is also where I disagree, is that we are a much bigger beer drinking nation than America. Maybe not in literage, but everyone knows SAB, and anywhere you go in the country, you can get SAB beers.
Sure.
And you can get or Old Brandhouse, Windhoek, and Heineken. So that means beer is far more accessible. But where in America, the local townsfolk of a small microbrewery in the middle of Sierra Nevada, in the mountains, they support their local brewery. In South Africa, our support goes to Castle because they sponsor the Proteas, Bafana Bafana, the Springboks, etc. So that's a different kind of loyalty. It's a patriotic loyalty. It's not a loyalty to your neighbor who's trying to derive an income from making beer or wine. And the same happens in Stellenbosch. You can have someone living next to whatever it is,
Squatter camps or what? What are you doing?
No, you might call it a squatter camp, but you can have someone living next to that particular brand and they won't ever drink it because it's not within what they're trying to drink. So our thing in South Africa is also to be more neighborly. It's like if there was a brewery next to me and that brewery made decent enough beer and that beer owner did every fete and church bazaar and biscuit mill and market and sponsored the kids' schools, whatever it is, you would eventually be tasting so much of that beer. You'd speak to the brewer, you'd come across him and go, "How's it, man? How's it? My brewery's in Thomaskloof. Oh, cool. I live in Thomaskloof. I'm only going to buy your beer from now on." And all of a sudden, that guy's got a loyal customer. Then your neighbors start seeing it. And then the oak who owns that bottle store in Thomaskloof doesn't emphasize the Castle and the Black Label and the Hansa and that as much as he used to. He'll start saying, "This is Thomaskloof Brewing Company, and it's right here."
Yeah.
So you start buying it, and you create more loyalty and more support, and eventually that oak is in his area as big as whoever else it might be. And then he starts getting phone calls from a dude in Stellenbosch, from a guy in Pretoria.
Yeah.
I'd like to stock your beer. But he's happy. He goes, I don't need to sell it to you because I'm selling enough as it is here.
Yeah.
But we don't have that. Here, our guy starts a brewery in his garage in Kommetjie, and tomorrow he wants to be listed in every bottle store in Johannesburg, in Durban, and in Port Elizabeth. And he wants to negotiate on price, and he wants to do this, and he wants to do that, but he can't even get the 7 pubs and 8 bottle stores that are around him
Yeah.
to buy his beer.
Yeah. Better start
Yeah, I
small,
mean-
start with an impact, start with that concentration of, space around you in the brew pub, and yeah.
I mean,
for
we
a
really-
bit of support. Before you say anything,
Oh, yes, open that up. So I see you suddenly almost short on time. I don't know how that happens.
I don't know
This
how
happens
this-
every time.
This happens every time, but we've got 10 minutes left. We've just opened a Muskoka Brewery Schnickert Stout made with coffee.
Schnickered.
And while Troy is doing that, remember you guys can go over to hashtag Beer Time. The page is called Beer Time on Facebook. Find the post from Troy posting earlier about the Festival of Beer. Comment on that with what you're most looking forward to about the Festival of Beer. And in a
You've
few
got 10
minutes,
minutes
we
left.
might actually be giving you some tickets to come and join us at the festival.
Murray, I interrupted you. I'm so sorry.
No, Troy, that's absolutely
Don't worry,
fine.
I've been doing it to you all day.
All day. You've been doing this to me for about 10 years. But what I was going to say was that a couple of weeks ago we actually went and visited Nick at Stone Circle. And it was I think it was a Thursday evening.
Nick from Gardens, Wembley Square.
At Wembley Square. And I mean, they've got a really nice little setup there. And he was there, and Tim and one other guy, and they just kind of do the beers over the counter. Guys just hang out there, and it was really, really pleasant. But I think he's doing it's right. It's like,
Get your neighbors to buy from you.
yeah, and he's in a
Simple.
great situation. Everyone goes right to him, and he's just there, and he's just giving the beers out.
So, guys, we're drinking another Canadian beer here. This is don't apologize.
Canadian,
5.6%.
Canadian, eh?
It's very easy drinking. It's made with coffee, but it's not your
Schnickered.
thick Guinness stouts that you're thinking about. It's a very light-bodied.
Who brought this one?
I did.
Ah, well done. Troy, just getting back to that as well.
Talk to me, Martin.
We haven't spoken a lot about Festival of Beer, but the other thing is when we do the judging. So the Festival of Beer has the most comprehensive, commercially available beers on show in the Southern Hemisphere. So there are bigger festivals than us. There's Beervana in Wellington in New Zealand, and it has over 500 beers, but they also include home brewers and that sort of stuff. So we are only beers that you can buy, either from their tap room or from a bottle store or at the festival, etc. And again, it boils down to now we are opening our third dark beer. This is purely by coincidence, ladies and gentlemen. I would just like to tell you that we brought dark beers to the show. But when the judges judge the lagers, they've got like 50 lagers to judge. When they judge the IPAs, they've also got 50 IPAs. When they judge the pale ales, they've probably got 30. And then when they judge the stouts or the dark beers, they've got like 6 to judge. So you've got a very good chance of coming to the Cape Town Festival of Beer out of 213 beers and winning the dark beer category. But you are the best out of those 6 beers. You're not necessarily a good beer. And that's where Troy, who's actually one of the conveners of the judges, that's where like it must be difficult because you got to choose a winner, but your winner might be crap.
Yeah. I think it is improving though. I think
It can only go one way.
Yeah, the stout category or the dark beer category there's a lot you can hide behind in terms of flaws or faults in the beer. But yeah, we try and take it as objectively as possible and give the award to someone who's deserved of that award. It is a pity that there's the ratio, that the competition is so much stronger for the lagers and the paler beers or the IPAs. But you work with what you got, and if you only get 6 or 10 dark beers,
You work with that.
You work with that, and sometimes when you get these competitions, the darker beers, they do try and make them thick and heavy and high alcohol, which it totally strips your palates. So you can only say like, wow, this is an intense beer. But I mean, those beers are, the beers that we do get are well made. And if they're not well made, then I will say this, Martin, if a beer is not well made,
Doesn't get a good score.
and if it's the first in its category and it's not well made, I will personally make sure it doesn't win an award.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's
Because
right.
we can't.
Just because it's the best.
You can't justify. No. That's
Just because it's the best of a bad bunch,
I
you
will
can't
I will
go.
put my foot down.
Here's your
My
award.
proverbial beer foot.
Troy's quite tall, so it's a big foot.
I mean, the one we haven't really talked about today was Fraser's Folly and Beer Country.
Yes.
I mean, they won last year.
No, they won best stand.
Oh, they won best.
They won best stand. Their beer sadly didn't win. But they've got a hybrid beer, a Moor coffee, which is condensed milk inside their stout.
They're on the
But
show in 2 weeks' time.
They're on the show. Greg's a great guy, was at school with me. But their stout's not, if I tasted that stout on its own, probably not necessarily the best stout around. But when it's got the condensed milk, it's a completely different style of beer. It's a hybrid. And then it's up to the judges to judge.
Can we remember who won best out last year?
Best dark beer was actually a Belgian beer. It was
that's
a
right.
Belgian beer. So listen, Troy boy, are we going to do that last beer quick?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I just think we've got
3 minutes.
We've got 3 minutes. We've got another a person on the show next, and we don't want to upset those listeners who are looking forward to that show. But guys, I actually wish we had a bit more time.
We always
To-
have this.
to
We always
talk.
have this problem. Can you not get an extra hour on the show, Troy? I mean, you really.
Well, I mean, I can't start drinking at 11, can I? Can I?
Can you guess?
No, I'm not so sure it would make for good entertaining. Well, maybe it would. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being on the show. I can't believe it's time's gone so quickly. I say it every show. Tuckbox, I'm sure we'll have you back on the show because I'm sure that the lines have just been going crazy. The lights have been flashing on and off.
Hi, Troy's mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Murray, you
Call me
always...
back. Call me back.
Yeah, call me back. Murray, you as always are a delight and a joy to have on the show.
T-Bone.
This is only when you bring foreign beers.
So is it a problem that I've run out of foreign beers?
Yeah,
Go
then-
back overseas.
Yeah, you're not. It's going to be a struggle to get you back on the show. No,
Expensive outing to be on the show.
Thanks for listening, guys and girls. Make sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Just search for #BeerTime. That's #BeerTime written out in full. Hope you enjoyed the show and check you next time. Cheers.